Adam and Eve did not come out of the garden to do pivot tables in Excel. Every one of us had the Chat GPT moment where we went into some LLM and extracted data out of it and went, wow. And over the last couple of years, wow has turned into, geez, I can code now. I can do graphics on demand. I can do design on demand. I can create, literally. And we're all wondering, where does this go? And we just happen to be here at this moment. 50 years from now and 50 years looking backward, this is a moment in time, but it's an extraordinary moment in time while we go through all of this. So I'd put the agentic stuff way up there. So I'm pretty confident the human purpose is greater than the technology portfolio we deal with today.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkoff's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 229. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a tool, it's becoming a collaborator. In this episode, we explore how advancements in data science, compute power, and autonomous systems are driving a new era where humans and AI work side by side. From coding and design to decision-making processes, AI is rapidly enhancing what individuals and organizations can achieve. The conversation dives into real-world applications, particularly in financial auditing, where AI is transforming how data is analyzed, shifting from sample-based reviews to continuous full-scale insights. This evolution is not just about efficiency, but about uncovering patterns and risks that were previously invisible, fundamentally changing how industries operate. Looking ahead, the discussion explores the balance between innovation and responsibility. As AI adoption accelerates across enterprises and small businesses alike, questions around trust, cybersecurity, and governance become critical. The episode challenges listeners to think about how they can adapt, upskill, and actively participate in shaping a future where AI augments human potential rather than replaces it. Now, a little bit about the guest. Stephen DeWitt is the CEO of MindBridge, the world's leading provider of AI-based financial analysis. From guiding Cobalt networks through IPO and Sun acquisition, to leading WorkMarket's exit to ADP, then steering Azul Systems and CloudBees as CEO, how does Stephen DeWitt repeat startup success? Now CEO of MindBridge, he draws from C-suite roles at HP, SVP Enterprise Marketing, WebOS GBU, Cisco, VP GM Enterprise, Symantec, VP Worldwide Marketing, and Automation Anywhere, CTO, to share leadership tactics for navigating pivots, global scale, and enterprise sales.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the podcast today to talk about artificial intelligence, which is obviously one of the topics that everybody wants to hear a little bit more about. So thanks for taking the time today.
Looking forward to being here, and it's a meaty topic.
Yes, it is. So as we mentioned right before the recording, the first question I like to ask all guests is, what brought you into the space that you're working in? Was it finances first and AI second, or AI first? What was the draw into the work that you're doing now?
You know what? I'm 60 years old. I'm at the end of a 42 plus year career in building technology companies. I've had the lifelong privilege to build some amazing companies with amazing people. Our industry is, a composition of, creativity, engineering, science, futurism, passion, intensity, competitiveness. Other than the amazing honor of raising 4 kids, I've been on the executive staffs of Cisco and Hewlett Packard and Symantec and Sun, and have built a number of game-changing startups and doing that now. So what brought me into AI is the moment. I think if you look at all of the evolution of all the enabling technology we built through the years, we're at a moment where unbound compute and agentic, human, the ability for humans to excuse the pun, mind bridge with artificial intelligence, hey, it's the moment. So I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Right. And is there like one thing that you're potentially more excited about, say, over the next couple of years? Like you brought up agents. This is obviously the topic du jour, right? It's like we've already moved past LLMs. Those are boring.
Yeah.
Those are yesterday.
Yeah.
Is it agents? Is it something that's coming beyond agents, or is that really the
It's a great question. To me, and again, look, I'm a nerd, so you're going to get a little bit of a nerd answer here. So my apologies to your listeners. Um, the agentic side is obviously super exciting. We're humans. Every one of us had the chat GPT moment where we went into some LLM and extracted data out of it and went, wow. And over the last couple of years, wow has turned into, geez, I can code now. I can do graphics on demand. I can do design on demand. I can create, literally you start, soaking yourself in the potential. And we're all wondering where does this go? And we just happen to be here at this moment, 50 years from now and 50 years, looking backwards. This is a moment in time, but it's an extraordinary moment in time while we go through all of this. So I'd put the agentic stuff way up there. Adam and Eve did not come out of the garden to do pivot tables in Excel.
right?
So, I'm pretty confident the human purpose is greater than the technology portfolio we deal with today. And that leads me to maybe the other two biggies. And one is, I mentioned it earlier, unbound compute. I've been in compute my entire career. When you think of anything that's super fluid, it has no friction. Compute is still a friction for us as a humanity in terms of what we can do. And until we become truly unbound, you don't have you don't have to do a RAM upgrade of your brain for the autonomous system inside of you to work. And so a lot of people talk about the autonomous enterprise, and we're big believers of it. And I think it is within the next few years of reality, but it requires a lot of compute. So there's a lot of exciting breakthrough layers. And then the final area, and I won't nerd out on your listeners, but it's data science. What makes what we do, and really anybody that does anything other than wrappers around artificial intelligence, is the depth of the science. We are a summation of all known data science around anomaly detection in numbers. We're a large numerical model. And when you think about what you'd want to have inside of that to tap into as a brain, that's what we build. And that's the artistry of data science is really in its golden era. We have a lot of academic partnerships with a lot of leading data science institutes, not only around the world, but big time in Canada. And it's exciting for the golden eras of all of this to be happening really at the same time.
Super interesting. Thanks for that. One question I think that came up when I was, reviewing your company, connected to what you're saying here about the excitement and obviously the speed at which things are going to be changing is, the financial industry. I've never worked in it. I've had some adjacent connection with it in previous jobs. It doesn't strike me as the industry that takes on new technology very quickly and implements it very quickly. It's a little bit slower. So how is your perspective with this in the financial or the AI adoption of the financial industry, right?
I'd say yes and no. The thing about the financial industry or financial services industry, and really those in finance in general, innovation is only applicable, against your ability to generate more revenue or generate more earnings. Just because technology evolved doesn't mean either one of those things happens. So there's I think a natural, I don't want to say skepticism, but there's a natural ROI barrier to adoption of any technology that's huge. The second thing is this is where regulation is, and these are industries where every new piece of software is an asset. You can't retire it. You've got to be compliant in every place from here to Timbuktu. And historically, from a systemic level, you haven't had the ability to see everything. One of the big breakthroughs, that we enabled was moving to full population analysis of numbers. And so if you think about it in the old world, when you'd test, kind of like if you were taking a blood sample and what you could test for, you used a and all due respects to, Silicon Valley people that may have tried to create startups around this. You can't figure everything out from a drop.
Mm.
You can figure some things out from a drop. You can get a marker and a signal, and you can learn a couple of things from a drop. But you need to do a lot more on a continuous basis to be able to render, what is really going on. And so historically, when you think about financial integrity, what keeps our numbers safe, we haven't been able to take more than a drop. Now we can look at your blood system. This is a terrible analogy, but we can look at your blood system all the time. And when you shift from sampling to continuous, much like we did in cyber, I mean, if you think about cyber defenses, it's not like you just take a little drop of blood and try to figure out how you're going to be safe. Certainly not in the world of AI. So we take the same approach around numbers. When you type 56, how do you know you didn't mean to type 57? And what corrects that? And how would you possibly operationalize that inside of an enterprise? These are the sort of challenges. Well, they may seem, at least that numerical fat finger number may seem like a funny thing. You make a fat finger mistake inside of an automated process that's 100 million rows deep inside of a general ledger, it'll never be seen. It'll be accrued for, and that's missed EPS. So now you need to look at everything all the time, and that's the moment we're in.
And there's no way to do this without an army of humans or.
Man, I look, I hear I have four, kids that are in the workforce right now. And I think, we're all wondering, is this going to do away with a lot of jobs? Well, the answer is, of course it is. I go back to my joke about pivot tables. And look, there will be dislocation as a result of it. And anybody that says otherwise is just literally shoveling it. There will be dislocation, and it takes a village to salt the dislocation. The jobs will be there. They're just changing in nature. We work very closely with big four accounting firms. And yes, there are less accountants, but there's more data scientists now. Data engineers, and other skills that are representative of what it takes to be competitive as a big four company now, not 10 years ago. So there is going to be workforce dislocation. But look, I'm an older guy. I like the band Boston back in the day. Don't fear the Reaper. The transformation is coming. The technology is there to augment humans. I don't believe, the Borg is coming. At the end of the day, we will find out where the equilibrium or the right balance is in whatever role, as a painter, as a content producer, as a used car salesman, what the impact of AI does. I'm an optimist, and I believe ultimately the there's a point in time where humanity has to do more than it's doing now. Our planet will give way, and the human species will have to move on to new horizons. It's going to take a future where humans and all the intelligence of the world comes together.
Very, I think, realistic, but also exciting perspective on the future, which I think, from all these podcasts that I've been doing, there is certainly a level of excitement that everybody has, but also I think simultaneously there's this level of concern or fear or skepticism, whatever term you want to add to it, which I think is maybe the healthiest way to perceive this new revolution that we're going through. Maybe let's move back to the financial sector, because this is obviously where you're focused. Like, is there more hesitancy? Is there more excitement within your industry for this AI revolution, or is it because of all the regulation, because of all the kind of top-down heavy handedness, that, yeah, is there I guess just greater hesitancy?
You know what? It's a fabulous question, and I think it speaks to the, I don't know what's not the right, the oxymoron, or the yin and the yang of the benefit of AI. What finance ultimately has to deliver is truth in numbers, right? I mean, would you invest in a company that wasn't audited or wasn't held to regulatory standards? Well, who knows in this world, maybe
Yeah.
people do. But I think the astute investor would look for guardrails and things that validate, what management says, and the right control systems. It wasn't that long ago that we had Enron. Out of Enron came the PCAOB and other governance things so that people didn't do bad things with their numbers. So I think ultimately, when I think of what we deliver in terms of quality and numbers, it's unprecedented. So that's good. Our one of our largest customers is KPMG. That's somebody that you pay millions of dollars to get their opinion on whether or not something's true. The bar with them is super high. And I think when they characterize using, technology like us, it's about quality, not, oh, look at all the headcount we're able to reduce. So let's stick those arrows in the quiver of, there is an enormous ROI here. I think the job dynamic again, and really, maybe it's not, maybe putting it in the job dynamic isn't the right way of saying it. Just what's the business of financial integrity? How is it rendered? Like, I'm sure year over year, the way you do your taxes is a little different now. Back in the day, you used to get a pen and a paper and try to fill all this stuff in. Now you throw a few PDFs in some magic hole and out it comes. And you're happy with that. You probably got a bigger return. You did it faster. And now next time you get asked to do something like that, you're a little more culturized to do it. You're going to do a little bit better. So the dislocation and the challenge of it, did tax preparers go out of, do you know a lot of tax preparers that lost their, I walked by a payphone the other day and I was reminiscing. I mean, things change. I think the key is for all of this to do it without a black box. And I think if I had any fear, really, the concentration of resources and assets, and then the assumptive belief that, have you ever read an end user license agreement on any piece of software you've ever used? Be honest.
Every single one.
Of course you have. So, Mark, if you knew everything you'd signed away already,
Right.
you'd probably look at this AI conversation and go, oh, this is child's play. But the AI one raises the stakes in a big way. And so we don't want to be misled. Black box anything here is no bueno. And we as a humanity have to rally against that.
Could you touch a little bit on like a tangible example of MindBridge, right? So I think we're
Sure.
dancing around it a little bit, but just to give people, the audience and myself, a little bit more of a clear understanding of what you guys are doing, because I think it's
Sure.
quite interesting, and we've touched on it a bit.
Yeah, if you think of our big use case, I kind of joked a little bit on tax, but our biggest use case is audit. The external audit world, which is huge, is about a $200 billion marketplace. So to put it in real simple terms, you take a customer's data, so their ERP data, their general ledger data, or their payroll data, or their credit card data, or whatever. You literally take the file, you import it into MindBridge. All of the AI right now maps against our data science, our what's called our ensemble. And then our ensemble is reflected through KPMG's methodology. So if you can imagine KPMG's lens on top of all of our power, all of our known data scientists. So think all of a sudden an accountant now knows everything. Full stop. They know everything. And they can see everything, which they never were able to do before. So if you go, like in the last 2 years, I went from a sample of a few thousand data points and had to infer out of that with my own knowledge to, I now look at every single transaction through every lens and directly through the lens of the company, of my company, KPMG. And then all of the intelligence of our analysis populates their working papers. So the working papers are what they document to go, hey, you had 15 unusual transactions in Peru last month that were outside of your control system. And how do you know that? Our system found it. And then all of the forensics that you go through as an auditor to distill out what the risk is there, we do all of that automagically. So that's just a perfect example of a use case in external audit over a 24-month period in terms of change in capability. If you think inside of an enterprise, I mentioned earlier I was at HP. I led the Americas. A lot of countries in the Americas, a lot of different tax levels, a lot of different partners, a lot of different VATs, supply chain costs, accrual rates, things of that nature. In the past, we didn't have computational power or tools that could go out and mine all of that relative to the current moment so that you knew exactly where something was at a given time. So we now have the ability to do that. That allows you to better forecast, better take accruals, better deal with risk inside of your business. Being able to see everything all the time has fundamentally changed the way that you look at financial integrity. And those are two of lots of different examples.
Very interesting. And the speed at which this is done, I'm assuming, is very quick.
Continuous. It's continuous. And that's, when you think about in financial audits, a publicly held company, I'm sure you own stock in a company, they have to provide their financials 30 days after the end of a quarter. And then there is a cooling off period and there's a blah, blah, blah. Think how antiquated that is in today's world. Why do you have to wait 30 days? Why do you even have to wait until tomorrow? Why is audit something that is even periodic? Why am I not at this moment in a state of audit? And that's really what an autonomous system, you're going to hear a lot about autonomous systems. I'm a big believer in that. And it's true. When you walk outside and it's cold, you put on a coat. You didn't have to provision yourself. The system knew what to do. And it used your unsupervised machine learning brain to know that, hey, if I put some clothing on, it's going to make me warm. And so the fluidity of that, the ongoing perpetual orchestration will characterize enterprise businesses as we get into the 30s.
Super interesting. What does this mean for, I'm a small sole proprietor, small business. Does this mean if, the government is going to be auditing my business, it's not going to take 6 months, it's going to take 6 minutes, something like that?
Yeah, if even that.
Yeah. How does this kind of change the landscape for business owners? Obviously there's tremendous benefit for the government, for these auditors to check for fraud, for security risk, and all these kinds of things. I'm unable to imagine the real benefit for say small, medium, or even larger businesses in this sense.
Oh, I think the benefit is overwhelming on so many levels. Market access, market sophistication, trust in commerce, being compliant, no inefficiency in spend, targeted operating dollars. I think at the end of the day, every business in theory would like to find its most efficient model. And I think one of the things that, and I do talk about this quite regularly about being a perpetual entrepreneur. I think this is the golden era of individual entrepreneurialism. I don't think the future is, hey, I'm going to go work for Ford Motor Company for N number of years, because Ford Motor Company will ultimately become what is the most efficient form of Ford Motor Company. Just as Marc will ultimately, if you choose to be an entrepreneur, be the most efficient version of Marc. So you're going to want to have the greatest reach with the most efficient operations. You're going to want to be assisted to hit your vision. You may be a painter. You're going to want to have broader distribution of your reach. You're going to want to have one-to-one conversations with people around the world. You're going to want to react in more real time to what a market bears in terms of your price. These were all things that were fundamentally beyond the individual entrepreneur in the past. I happened to be there. I'd like to say Cobalt. We certainly built the web server that created the internet. But when you think about the impact that the internet had on small business, it was massive beyond belief, and yet it changed every business that's out there. I talked about Ford. Ford after the internet was very different. Ford after the cloud was very different as more operations became virtualized. We're moving into a global workforce, so labor arbitrage. Hey, go find cheap labor over in another part of the world. Well, what's less expensive than artificial intelligence? Of course, unless you pay Microsoft a large amount of money, but that's a whole nother topic. So I think, and I certainly, I have a teacher, a nurse, a very high tech son and daughter gamer, all that are in industries. Back years ago, we used to say, don't let your kids, talk to strangers on the internet. How naive. We're a global community. We're going to operate globally, and let's make sure that we're safe and we've got the right tools to do it to the best of our ability.
Right. Well, maybe that term "safe" is a good segue to like trusting AI. And like for instance, I was just a very small hack about 2 weeks ago, compromised a couple of my systems, and I've had to rebuild the entire IT stack from scratch. Spent thousands of dollars to make this happen for a small entrepreneur, right? It's several late nights. So, and if we're going to be introducing AI more and more to read continuously every aspect or many aspects of our business, I think that trust in these AI systems is going to become not just essential. Like, I don't even have the term for it. It's going to be monumental. So one, how is MindBridge dealing with that? And then two, how do you kind of think about this in the larger?
Yeah. And look, I'm a little outspoken here. So, I'm a little bit, little strong here. Because of the company we keep, we adopt the most open, auditable stance on our AI. Every algorithm we have is documented. How we bring algorithms together is all documented. It's all, we have, whether it's the highest ISO standards or SOC compliance or whatever, we're all over that. But look, anyone who knows what they're talking about in this space recognizes that every layer inside of the AI sandwich has a risk horizon, if you will. We part of our analysis, like that we do, is an unsupervised machine learning brain. And so what that means is we see a lot of things. So if I held up this pen and you look at this and you say, oh, it's got a black cap and it's got a blue base and stuff like that, we would immediately look at the black and then try to render every form of black and why is it this black, and then start looking at why black is used on a pen, and they would have things. And the point that I'm making here is that as the depth of analysis goes and the depth of orchestration from that analysis goes, there's a lot of potential areas where information is handed off. And I joked a little bit earlier with you about the end user license agreement that you've read so vigilantly
Every night.
You have agreed to it, as if your kids. You have agreed to already share everything in the world here. And that's in a non-automated, non-orchestrated world where people just have your data. So I don't think we're even remotely close to all of the necessary governance that's going to need to be in place. Not even in the first inning. Well, maybe in the first inning. The bands on the teams are on the field. I think really depending on where you need to be in the AI adoption curve, either individually because of your business, the impact in your enterprise. Some industries are going to get changed like this. You're going to have to put yourself on that curve in terms of how willing you are to adopt technologies that you may not have a full, complete understanding of.
So we could, I don't know if we want to go down the governance route or path in this conversation. Do you think that, well, I mean, obviously, government's always slower than private enterprise, and it, takes, I don't know, a generation to catch up, a decade to catch up sometimes. If AI is moving ahead at these crazy speeds, for instance, OpenClaw, for instance, right, is everybody's talking about it right now. But the capacity to get hacked or for it to, I just listened yesterday to another podcast, and one of these people that had installed OpenClaw, it purchased a $3,000 course to get better at its agentic needs without any notification, without any verification. So it just bought a $3,000 course, then moved on.
Well, that means somebody hard-coded their credentials and their credit card in order for that to happen. And shame on you for hard-coding your credentials.
Right.
If you're doing that right now, again, read the EULAs. And if you're putting your credit card up on a website and you're giving anything access to operate on your behalf or fill in a password on your behalf, then again, I'm not sure that's something you blame AI on, whether you blame,
No.
do you know what you're doing?
Yeah, but I think that's going to my point where, these kinds of regulations or like risk awareness needs to come from somewhere. And if this is kind of the Wild West right now, people are just going to get burned continuously, whether it's a $3,000 course or otherwise, which, maybe is just kind of a normal thing that we go through every
It doesn't need to be. Remember when viruses first came out, and in the Michelangelo virus came, and everybody was afraid of putting floppy disks inside their computer. Y2K, planes falling from the sky on at midnight. There's no boogeyman here. Can you automate a bad thing? You better believe it. And can that cost, dearly? No question about it. Social media's cost thousands of lives, and anybody trying to tell you otherwise, again, has lost their mind. The impact of all of this technology has a cost to it, and we're if we do our jobs right as a responsible race, we'll learn how to govern it. We'll learn how to manage it. We'll learn what's acceptable and what's not. I think again, AI, different forms of AI have different inherent safeguards. LLMs are only as good as what they're taught. It's why they make mistakes. It's why they hallucinate. Why they have bias. We don't do that. We're a machine learning platform. We don't have bias because we don't have the ability to introduce bias because all we are is a reflection of what we see. So there is you can't introduce your thinking onto our platform. It'll never, doesn't equate. So the manifestation of human tools, and the businesses that ultimately get enabled as a result of those tools have to be built on a foundation of trust or they won't be durable. History has shown us that, and I'm confident that will continue.
Fair enough. I think one question that I have for you here, and you may have
touched on this earlier on when you were talking about, humans being replaced by these AI tools. I don't want to necessarily go down that route, but like when it comes to judgment, right? Like human judgment,
Mhm.
if we are automating, or if you are automating your processes significant, like where does human judgment come in if these AI
It's a great
tools
question.
already know
Great
everything,
question. Great
right?
question.
Yeah.
And here's how I usually answer the question. If I gave you a quiz to, I got a city in my head that I'm thinking about, and I give you one question to ask to get that right. What do you think the chances are you're going to figure out what the city is?
Pretty low, I would say.
Pretty low.
Yeah.
Now, if I gave you the ability to understand everything that I would have, that me, because of me, my background, all the things that I know about where I've been, where I've lived, all the things I've historically done, written about, whatever, all had digested that and had come to you in the moment that I asked that, what city am I thinking about? And it said to you, Mark, I'm not exactly sure what city he's going to come up with, but here are the 4 that are most likely.
Right.
Are you better off or worse off?
Significantly better off in making that decision. Fair enough.
So, I think at the end of the day, you could have done the research. You could have gone onto my LinkedIn bio. You could have spent months trying to increase your odds from random to 25%. And AI made you 25% more effective instantaneously through human factors.
Mhm.
So, when Captain Kirk looks back to Spock isn't sitting there in front of a pivot table in Excel trying to crunch this month's numbers for the close. He's asking for an insight.
Mm.
He's made better from that, and human judgment makes the call. Will there be things where a machine learning engine can make a judgment call based on variables where a machine learning thing can digest a lot more stuff than you can in order to make an informed decision? Heck yes. But as it relates to, the ultimate judgment call on at really any level, I don't think any of us envision that we're building anything that can replace this. But we sure can give you a coat when it's cold.
So when I believe his name was Lee Sedol got beaten by AlphaGo several years ago, and then there was Gary Kasparov, which was beaten by Deep Blue. There was
Yeah.
this term being thrown around called centaur teams, right? So it's a human with an AI was able to beat like a grandmaster at chess or at Go. So to me, from what you're saying, this trend is not just continuing, but it's exploding. And when it comes to human judgment or judgment in general, am I correct in understanding here that, say, over the next couple of years, if we're thinking about the future now, humans are going to be forced, although I don't like that term, but forced to be using AI to make proper judgments in many different aspects of business, maybe even life, etc. It's just good. We are essentially
Mhm.
changing the nature of what it means to be human. We are becoming AI infused.
Ye- yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think there's any, we've talked a lot about the technology divide, the communication divide, the access divide, the this divide. Is there going to be an AI divide? Are
Mhm.
people going to be advantaged because they're enhanced as a result of AI? There's no question about it.
Mhm.
And again, I look at that not as the, don't fear the reaper, but more the responsibility of what we have to manage through. What does it mean to, I have a daughter who's an educator. What does it mean to be educated moving
Yeah.
forward?
Yeah.
What is, how are you going to, what are you going to pay for? How is that? What makes, and I know this may be political taboo right now, what makes our country and our businesses competitive moving forward? What do we need to invest in? It's a global economy. There's craziness going on right now. Not a unified agenda towards what is an inevitable common not end point, but a common point that we all are going to face. It doesn't matter whether you're in Ukraine or Russia or Iran or Iraq or the east side of Timbuktu. There's a lot to be anxious about, but I think I'm going to be a believer always that people with more information are going to do better than people with less information. And while there's a lot of bad information out there, misinformation or information that's whatever, and that's another area that you could get into all day long about fakes and how I can manipulate you. And that's a huge issue. But if I go back to the purest sense, I'd rather have people know more, have more access to diverse sources of information, not this is a source of information and you have to be intelligent because of that.
Yeah.
So I'm an optimist.
So am I, to a certain degree. So maybe something practical to take away for myself or the audience especially. One of the trends that keeps coming up on this podcast whenever we're talking about AI is you have to become educated in these tools. Like spend an hour a day minimum. Doesn't really matter what you're focused on. Just try to act a bit like a sponge and take up as much as you can. Because if you don't, you're going to be, whether you're a business owner or just somebody in the job market, you're going to be completely outcompeted. Like you're going to be almost unemployable if you don't have these skills in the next, say, 10 years for sure, but maybe even 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
You'll look out of touch. I totally agree with you, Mark. And I think also my challenge would be to your listeners, don't look at it as I have to learn it. Look at what I'm going to get the chance to learn.
Yeah.
I know, and look, I'm an older guy who's been through it all. This old dog is learning all sorts of new tricks. It's making me better at what I do. Better as a parent, better as a leader, better as an innovator, better as a marketeer, better as in dealing with my customers. I don't think I have, as my team often knows, I have my communication system in front of me. I have my broadcasting here. I have all my instant messaging, my Slack and email over here, and this is my AI machine. And my AI machine, it's either listening or I am, feeding stuff so that I am always, my level of preparedness and everything I do is at a very high level. And while that may seem weird, it makes me better at what I do.
Yeah, and maybe it's kind of a final point here. I see the time is winding down. It's going to be not just a technological change, but also kind of a cultural change where people become accepting of allowing AI to kind of get into, more of your personal life, more of your business life. It's going to have to read the information. It's going to have to read what you're doing or pay attention to what you're doing in order to get the benefit that I think we're all kind of excited to experience.
Hey, it's going to be I think Mark Twain said, "May you live in interesting times." Well, we definitely got that.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect place to end the podcast here, Stephen. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll have your LinkedIn and your website up on the show notes. Any other places that you want people to reach out or follow what you're doing?
No, that's great.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I look forward to keeping in touch.
Perfect.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.